and I am a teacher. I served as a teacher in Korea through the Fulbright program for from 2009 until 2011. And then I continued to stay there as a teacher. I worked in Korean schools for 6 years. And I came back home to be with family since I'm born in Los Angeles. And I came back home to LA through Teach for America. So I've had about 3 years of experience teaching in American schools, about 6 years of experience teaching in Korean schools. And I just noticed that American teachers seemed so much more exhausted. And don't get me wrong, in Korea, people they are very sacrificial in their work when it comes to the teaching career, but it just seemed so different, and I wanted to make sense of this difference through my research, and that's why I'm here representing the School of Education. And here we go. So again, I spent 6 years in Korea during breaks, tea with my teachers, and we would talk about lesson planning. And what I found was somebody that really helped me make sense of this was this lady, Nam Hwa Kang. She is an education researcher. And I looked at a bunch of other people as well. Don't get me wrong. I tried to do a thorough literature review, but Nam Hwa Kang, she really helped me to understand the difference through her work on how time is spent as teachers. And what she found was that in Korea, on average, Korean teachers spend 570 hours in class with their students. And in America, teachers are spending 1,080 hours in class on average with students. And if you were to break it down as a percent, 570 is 35% of a Korean teacher's workday. That means they have 65% of their day to plan, to do administrative duties, socialize, whatever else they need to do. On the other hand, according to her research, 1,080 hours a year, that equates to 80% of teachers' work time in the United States. That means only 20% of their day is used for planning, for everything else that they need to do, grading and all that stuff. And so I was curious about this because it seemed to add up for me. It passed the eye test according to my years of teaching in the US and Korea. And I noticed when I talked to American teachers, they were working second jobs, they were bringing work home, and they were tired. When I talked with Korean teachers, they said, the reason I became a teacher was because of, in Korea, it's known to be a job with good work-life balance. Talk about difference. And so I thought that maybe we can learn something from the Korean context of education, considering their success in international test scores on the PISA and other things like that. I thought that there's something that we can really take away. And I know that American schools do well, but I'm talking about your average American public school. I think we can do better. I think we can push our students and have better student outcomes. And we need to look at this. And so I actually dug into my network and I asked 12 teachers, 6 from Korea, 6 from the United States, to interview with me. And we had interviews of about an hour to an hour and a half, covering a range of things. Total work time in class, total work time in general. And the stories I heard were interesting. Number one, I had to dispel my assumption that somehow American teachers were worse. According to my research, average test scores, average SAT scores were on par with their South Korean counterparts, but their outcomes were not. And I think that if we are a country that is dedicated, not just to the best schools, we need to really look at the way that we treat teachers. And while Hanushek from Stanford has a point that it might have something to do with pay, I think it has a lot to do with the issue of time. And finally, I want to bring up another finding, unexpected finding from my research, which was that South Koreans love the Korean policy of professional development. Have you ever heard of teachers loving professional development? I don't think so. Not in the US, but South Korea allows for flexible professional development based on affinity spaces that are self-led and pretty much all the time not in school. It is an opportunity for them to network with other teachers outside of their schools funded by the South Korean government on issues that they are passionate about. And it also helps them to get promotion points and things like that. I wish I could talk more about all these things, but I just want to say, oh, by the way, let me share my research. This is what my research showed. Pretty much the same thing. American teachers spend a lot of time with students. Do they have enough time to plan? Can they come to class refreshed with the kinds of content, quality content that is necessary to inspire them? And with that, I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.